Gotta climb to the top, but we're never gonna stop. When I'm low, yeah, we're going high. We're going high. We're going high. We're going high. Yeah, 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 yeah. In the air, yeah, feel it. You better believe it. When I'm low, yeah, we going high. Gotta climb to the top, no, I'm never gonna stop. When I'm low, yeah, we going high.
Welcome to episode whatever this is of Buckle Up Betties. Ladies, Betties, gentlemen, welcome to the shit show. Remember, E is for explicit, is not for everyone. I have literally lost my mind and caved into the peer pressure and invited two nervous Nellies to come and be on the Buckle Up Betties podcast tonight. I'm really excited. So my friend, and potentially, possibly, will one day be voted queen of the world, I'm just going to be honest with you, calls me and says, hey, I don't know anything about bourbon. What do you know about bourbon? I was like, that my husband drinks it and that I have a lot of it. And she says, we need to learn about bourbon. And so I think about that in the context of what we talk about here. And I have noticed more and more, the more networking meetings I go to, the more lunches and dinners that I sit at, that a lot of people are talking about the bourbon bubble right now. So there's a lot of people who are investing in bourbon because the secondary market's a big deal. And so you sort of wonder about, like, when you get a place at the table, how do you sort of keep a place at the table? And part of that is being sort of educated on what everybody else is talking about. And I find that a lot of men are talking about this. And since I feel like we are probably primarily a ladies audience with maybe, 20% men, if you want to learn about bourbon, this is the episode for you. I want to introduce all of my guests who are in attendance. I have Emily, the Queen of the World Rhodes, who is a friend of mine and an awesome community leader here in North Alabama. And this was all sort of her crazy idea that she pitched, and we're happy to have her here. We also have Brian Lovejoy, who is the mad mastermind behind one of the top bourbon bars in the South. That is, like, I think we could say that's verified by like 100 magazines. I mean, I feel like every time I turn around, his face is on some sort of Southern magazine talking about being this mixing mastermind. And then we finally did it. We talked the husband into getting on the microphone. The lure of the bourbon was too much for him.
The Skip Nichols.
The Skip Nichols. Okay, so Emily.
Yes, ma'am.
So tell me why you wanted to learn about bourbon.
Okay. I am 41, which is not that old. I'm not calling myself old. But when I turned 40, I struggle with decade birthdays. And I don't necessarily do it because I think, you're closer to dying. But every decade birthday, I realize how many things I don't know. So when I hit 40, I started thinking, okay, I don't know how to play golf, and that really bugs me. I don't know anything about, like, day trading. I don't know about...
I don't know about arc welding either, by the way.
I mean, just things like and like bourbon was one of those things. Like that's just to be clear, the only bourbon I've ever actually tasted is Fireball. We've talked about that.
Okay, everyone, all the men folk around the table are shaking their head that actually doesn't count.
Right. So I realized this. I don't like the smell of bourbon. I don't like the look of it. It looks like cough syrup to me.
So what you're telling me is right now you're literally in your personal hell because we are surrounded by the smell and look of bourbon.
Yes, but I'm very interested. I appreciate bourbon.
Now, so do you think I'm totally off base in, because you go to a lot of events and talk to a lot of people, everyone is talking about buying bourbon, trading bourbon, what bourbon they've tried. It's like become like a bragging rights thing. And a lot of times I feel like I'm just sitting there going, I like Kit Kat bars.
Yes, I do think that. And I think Brian, he's like the Justin Bieber of bourbon. Everybody wants to be his friend and hang out with him because they know he has this, cool bourbon friends he hangs out with and brings with him. So
Well, Justin Brian Bieber, would you like to?
Justin Bourbon.
Justin Bourbon?
I don't know that. Anyway, so in just talking to people, I've realized like I want to understand what all the words mean that everyone is talking about. When they say the words, whatever words are used to describe this, I want to know what they mean.
Because see, here's one of the things is that I sort of don't care enough to retain the information I've been given. So, for example, I think Skip has probably explained to me at least 5 different times the difference between whiskey and bourbon, and I still can't remember the difference.
I think it's the same. It's
Wrong.
Brian?
Incorrect.
Those are dietary fiber supplements that I take when I get nervous.
Continue.
So, yeah, you're well, it's spelled different. And depending on where you are. In the United States, a whiskey is a umbrella term for anything that's distilled from a mash of grain and stored in wood. So bourbon would be a type of whiskey, where rye is a type of whiskey, and there's just like default American whiskeys. Bourbon specifically has to be at least 51% corn. Usually there's 20 to 30% rye added to it, and there's some barley. The barley is there because it germinates really quickly, so it acts as a Kickstarter. But it can be 100% corn, but typically that's the breakdown of a bourbon. And rye has to be at least 51% rye, but most of your better ryes will be 100% rye.
So all I heard is that it's sort of like lipstick. There's lipstick, there's lip stain, there's lip gloss, there's chapstick. There's all different kinds that can still fall under the heading of lipstick.
Right. And there are like I say, there are American whiskeys that they're not ryes or bourbons. They're just their own thing. If they don't meet any of that criteria, bourbon has to be stored in new charred white oak barrels. Has to be made in the continental United States.
And so if I say the word bourbon, is there automatically like an extra dollar sign or an extra decimal point for a bourbon versus a whiskey? Or can they run about the same price?
Well,
because bourbon seems bougier to me.
Bourbon whiskey is a really big thing now because of your shows like Mad Men, Boardwalk Empire, things like that. Different movies where you see like a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle sitting on the desk or whatnot. It's the big boom right now. Rye's also getting really big. Scotch has always been big. Scotch has been big for a decade.
Huh. So I saw an article today, maybe in the New York Times, that wine prices are hitting an all-time low because there was an overage of California grapes. And so I think that makes people even more excited about bourbon because it seems more giftable. It's a little trendier. It's not wine. It's something a little different, correct?
You're right. And its shelf life is much longer. A bottle of bourbon sealed or can last for 100 years if it's stored properly.
And so that's what I think I'm finding is that a lot of bourbon drinkers are sort of like whinies who are like, well, I tried this very rare, and they do all these disgusting things where they smell and swirl and spit and all kinds of stuff. And I've never really, again, I like Kit Kat bars. I've never really been a wine person either. And so I feel like, though, that a lot of dinner conversations and things are sort of moving to that. And so I would like to be, a little bit more educated where I can sort of look like a badass at the dinner table when I really don't know. But I think we're going to taste test some tonight.
Yeah,
right?
we'll try some of these. Oh, yeah.
But so you would say that any bourbon mixed with like a Coke would be a bad idea, right?
Well, I'm not going to, I don't care what people drink. I'm not going to harp on anybody. But yeah, if you're drinking a quality bourbon, ideally it would be neat if it's 100 proof or more. A lot of times even master distillers will put a couple of drops of water in there. If the alcohol content's too high, it gets what they call closed nose because there's just too much alcohol. It can't open up. So a couple of drops of water in there will open it up, change the molecular structure of it.
And is it just water, or is the limestone water that you have, Skip, is there a difference in that?
I like the limestone water. It's what they make the Kentucky bourbon with. It's naturally filtered, doesn't have any of the metallic taste, and in my opinion, brings out the flavors a lot better without diluting them with that licking a steel wall kind of taste.
Betties, we're getting bougie up in here. Limestone water, have you ever?
No. Okay, Brian, go back. Did you say bourbon was American?
Bourbon is specifically American. A lot of people think it has to be made in, it's got to be made in Bourbon County or in Kentucky or this or that, but it's made all over. Speaking about the limestone, Did you hear any of that at all?
Yes.
Sorry, I've never been outside of my house. I've never seen this thing. It feels
Brian
oddly
is
intimate.
amazed at a microphone.
Yeah, I
Well,
don't
yeah,
like
I
this.
mean, it's very intimate.
I still just want to start singing Eminem songs right now. I feel like this is my one moment. What was? Oh yeah. So bourbon has the strictest regulations of any spirit in the world, including Scotch, on how it's produced. So your best bourbon on the shelf and your worst bourbon on the shelves are almost identical. The main difference in your flavor characteristics on that is going to be the wood. It's going to get 85-90% of its flavor from the wood. So the wood, how long it's in the barrel, how long the wood is dried, how much it's charred, all that is, or toasted, all that's super important as far as the flavor content or the flavor characteristics.
So what is whiskey not made in America?
And what is toasted?
Oh, well, if they lightly toast a barrel. You get so many people that are trying to do so many different things with their whiskeys now, like a 14 to 16-year whiskey, bourbon or any kind of whiskey in the United States is considered the most balanced. So you have these people who are late getting on the wave. So what they're trying to do is we're either going to put it on a ship, like Jefferson's does that, so it's constantly moving in the barrel to get more contact with the wood, or putting it in smaller barrels. They're doing different degrees of toasting and or charring the barrel. Sometimes they toast it, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to kind of tap into that moonshine kind of deal, where they're a real light wood instead of a heavy wood. So when you char the barrels creates what they call the red
Please
layer.
note, he's looking at mine and Emily's faces because I'm like, they take a culinary torch to it. Like, I'm like totally don't understand what's happening.
Yeah, they like a flamethrower.
There's a lot of chemistry involved.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
huge. Yeah. So when they char the barrel, it creates what they call the red layer, and that creates 10 different types of sugars. So that right there is where you're going to get your coconuts. Your vanilla comes straight from that. What? You okay? It comes straight from the char in the barrel.
I feel like we've jumped in the deep end of the pool without our floaties, Emily.
It's very educational. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, we were missing out about not knowing about this, even though it makes no sense.
So Skip and some of his friends went on the bourbon trail last year, and that was educational.
It was very educational. I sent you all the pictures.
All the pictures, all the stories. There is a lot of, sort of great American stories that come off the bourbon trail. And right now, there's a major distillery that actually has the first female master distiller.
It was Castle and Key. Marianne Barnes was the master distiller upon opening. She has since left Castle and Key, but she was the first master distiller since Prohibition. First female master distiller.
That's pretty cool.
Since Prohibition.
She sounds like a Betty.
That could be our next project, Ashley.
Hunt her down.
Everything we'll learn tonight, we'll start
We need to go find Mary and drink bourbon with her.
brewing
Now,
whiskey.
just to bring y'all back down to earth too, Fireball is actually the number one best-selling whiskey that comes out of Buffalo Trace.
Of course it is.
Oddly enough, they sell more of it than anything else. That still doesn't make it a bourbon, but it
But it does make it a whiskey.
it is a whiskey. It's a
I actually
flavored
really
whiskey.
thought it was just like its own thing. Like Fireball was its own independent, like terrible decision.
It's yeah. So it's got it's a whiskey based liqueur, has a sugar content and a flavoring component.
So then, if Fireball is a whiskey, what is a Jägermeister?
They're both liqueurs. The Jägermeister would actually be an Amaro if it were from Italy. So it's
Amaro.
right.
What's happening right now? My last name is something.
And your first initial is A, so there you go.
Right, an Amaro. So a bittersweet digestif.
I mean, has there ever been a better way to describe me as a person?
Yeah, exactly.
A bittersweet digestif. There you go. That's my wife.
Well, I think I just found a new profile update for myself. So Jägermeister is also in the whiskey family?
No. So
No.
Fireball, you take
It's
a
in the
they take a
Death
whiskey.
family.
Yeah. They take a whiskey. They add sugar to it. 2.5 to 35% sugar, and then a flavoring agent, which would be cinnamon there, and that's going to be a liqueur. If it were to have over 35% sugar, it would become a creme.
I was about to say, if it was a whiskey, I'm a whiskey drinker because I may or may not have let that pass my lips in college. A lot.
Just once.
Several times a night.
Well, I think
I don't know where to go from here.
the selections Brian has brought tonight are pretty top shelf. These are highly sought after. So, Brian, you want to tell us kind of what's on the menu?
Yeah, we'll go over a few of these. So the first one we're going to try is George T. Stagg. I was trying to give you a few different ones. A wheated bourbon, which we'll get in a second.
Oh my God, it smells like gasoline.
Yeah, this one, okay. This one right here is going to burn your palate just a little bit. So this is a 124.9 proof. That's a barrel proof bourbon.
It's a how much a proof?
124.9. So when they pull this out of the barrel, they do not add water to it before bottling.
Seriously, this smells like what you drink when you're sick.
I have a spit cup, just FYI.
I mean, if in the 1830s, maybe you drank that when you're sick. I mean, you could make a hot toddy out of it.
So
if you had a
how much is this per ounce?
In a bar, it'd be about a $40 pour. That's about a $400 bottle of whiskey. Aftermarket, everything I think is on a secondary collector's. We'll call it a collector's thing. Yeah,
So-
if you bought it in the store, that's about a $79. Is that right? About $79.
I was going to say,
If you
should
can
we
get
sip?
it.
But the boys have already
I
drank
can't even
theirs.
breathe. Like,
Well, we actually have Pappy 23, I think. No, 20?
You got a Pappy 20.
20.
And that's actually a 2010, so that's a...
Emily, I
that's a
have
well-
never hated you as much as I hate you
I'm
right
just
now.
going to stick my tongue in it first. See what happens.
Sounds really weird.
That's what she said.
Oh, it wasn't that bad. Okay, I'm going all in.
See?
Here we go.
I would highly recommend that you smell it a little bit first. Oddly enough, with your mouth open.
Yes, smell it with your mouth open.
Nose it just a little bit. That'll get your palate ready to.
That tastes
be
like
able
I
to
just
actually-
licked a leather boot.
Well, you're getting the leather.
It's cold and flu season, so it's a good way to knock out
Absolutely.
this lingering cough.
Knock out a lingering thing of herpes. That is strong.
I did
Now-
not love it. I did not love it.
Touch it just a little bit on your tongue.
I did.
Let that burn just a little bit, and then go back and get another. The second or third will be better.
Oh, so there's no cure for herpes.
This is what I think a roast Stephen shot would taste like.
I have invited several of my fraternity brothers to listen to this episode of Buckle Up Betties, so I hope you guys are really enjoying the ladies. And
Like
their-
it burns
their
all the way
whiskey
down.
faces.
Like that's what's supposed to happen. Is the more you drink bourbon, does that burn go away?
So
or is
that, right. Yes, that's actually a good question. So they call that breaking through the wall.
I'm here for the science, Brian.
So what you're feeling is the ethyl alcohol. That's the burn. The content of it is so high. And rye has a bite to it, but what the sensation you're feeling, the needles and all that, that's the alcohol content. So after you drink it, and if you were to drink that and sip on it about 20 or 28 days, about like breaking any other habit. About 28 days later, it'll start to, that will go away, and then the sweetness of the bourbon will actually start to come through. That's called breaking through the wall.
That's not real. There's no sweetness in that.
You have
That
to
just
drink it
burned
for
my
28 days, he said.
that
Yeah.
just burned my nasal passages.
There really is sweetness. Once you get past that harshness and you get used to it, it almost tastes like Cracker Jacks, and I know y'all like Cracker Jacks.
So like your
right?
body chemistry changes, or you're like burning through like some sort of phlegm wall?
No, it just kind of, eventually your taste buds will get dull to it.
It's just like breaking down your will.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Like-
killing you. No, it's not killing you. Good.
Oh my gosh. That is not, you drink that. I'm not drinking that. Next.
Unbelievable.
I drank it. I took a sip.
So when you get like, could you blind taste test all these and know which one was which?
Oh, sure, but these are all very. They were picked out because of how different each one is.
Okay, I'm gonna do.
So
one
that
more.
one's going to be. So this is going to be George T. Stagg is a standard Buffalo Trace mash bill. So basically, if you were to take Buffalo Trace bourbon, age it on. Oh, you okay? Age it on up and serve it up as barrel proof. That's what this bourbon is.
Oh God, Emma's gonna throw up.
I don't know why people do this for fun.
The next time you call me with a good idea, I'm gonna tell you to go jump in the lake.
I'm just hoping neither one of you ladies hurl.
What am I do with this?
How does this, y'all? This smells like it would take the paint off the side of a building. Do you need a new glass?
That is one of the most sought after bottles
I'm not drinking
in the United
rest of that.
States.
I
Yeah.
took 2 sips.
Pass that to.
This one will be a lot. This next one will be much softer for you.
This one is softer?
Oh, yes.
The next one's much softer.
This one that smells like you'd take paint off a building?
This one's softer.
The Pappy Van Winkle 20.
No, you were confusing me with all
Doesn't
that
smell
technical
as
talk.
strong.
It's not. No, yeah. It's not. So this one.
I feel like this would take off my nail polish. That's what it smells like.
This is Pappy Van Winkle.
Yes.
I mean,
All right, how much is this on the aftermarket?
Well, I can definitely tell the difference in smell in this one.
so this bottle, a Pappy Van Winkle 20-year, it would be about $1,450 if it were a Buffalo Trace. But you're drinking Stitzel Weller bottling, so this would be closer to $1,900
Oh, it went
around
up.
there.
Oh, that's great.
So
This
Stitzel,
is
yeah,
the
yeah.
most expensive Buckle Up Betties we've ever done.
It really is.
Yeah, that you're.
I'm just happy to be here.
Let me
I'm
just tell y'all.
supporting you in your podcasting adventures, honey.
So when my first husband passed away and I moved back to the Shoals, Brian had just helped open the restaurant that he's at now to run their bar. We really probably should have gone live because Emily's face right now is pretty amazing. Anyway, so I went and Brian was like, Ashley, you cannot keep sitting at home. Come up here. I'm going to buy you dinner. I'm going to make you a drink. Well, that was pretty good offer. So here I go up to his bar and I'm eating dinner and he's making me a drink and I see like artichoke liqueur go in. I see an egg white. I see a coffee liqueur. And I was like, is this going to be gross? And he's like, yes, I like to serve gross shit to my people, Ashley. Like, you're so rude. I invited you here to be my guest. And he's just giving me this big dressing down. I'm like, whatever. And so I take a sip of this drink from like this like regionally renowned mixologist, and I take a sip and I look down my shirt and he said, what are you doing? I was like, I think I just grew hair on my chest. Anyway, so now he won't make me anything but a vodka and Sprite, and I've somehow talked him into bringing thousands of dollars of bourbon into my podcast. I'm surprised you still speak to me.
God bless America.
It's the first bourbon tasting I've been to that had a spit cup.
We're just keeping it real. I mean, I'm just being honest here.
Okay, so I'm about to drink a $1,900.
Right. So this is okay. So this in your bourbon collecting, the Pappy Van Winkles will definitely be the most sought after bourbons that are made today. And when you start getting to big bourbon collectors, they start wanting some pre-prohibition stuff from distilleries that are closed down and whatnot. And this is actually one of those as far as distillery that's no longer working as Stitzel Weller. So the man on this bottle, his grandson, created this bourbon in honor of his granddad, who owned Stitzel Weller throughout his lifetime. And now his grandson still carries on that brand, but their stuff is they get it from Buffalo Trace Distillery, where this is coming from, Stitzel Weller.
So are there like major bourbon like conglomerates that sort of control the bourbon, like the Diamond Trade?
Oh yeah. And I mean that's when Maker's Mark, I don't know, 6-8 years ago, whatever, came out and said we're going to have to lower the proof because we're running out, and then it created this rush to get it. But then the blowback on that was so big that they said, oh wait, never mind, we're not running out. We don't have to water it down anymore. They never did. That's how that kind of works. But yeah, it's like a De Beers kind of thing. And some of it, like your Pappies and stuff like that, that's not really that way. They really just have what they have, because like this right here, when it hit the shelf, he was guessing what his sales were going to be 20 years from the day he produced it.
Are these all Kentucky bourbons?
These are all the A.H. Hirsch isn't, but the rest of them are they're Kentucky bourbons. Both of these, this one is a Buffalo Trace, and this is now made at Buffalo Trace. Sorry, no one can see what I'm pointing at. The George T. Stagg and the Pappy Van Winkle.
So do you think that Pappy is the most popular because it's the most well known, or because it really does taste better?
It's the most. They were able to produce a big
so
cult
scared.
following because of people like Anthony Bourdain and Sean Brock, and product placement made it super, super popular. It's hard to talk. I'm watching
I
you
can tell
die.
a difference in that one and the first one. This is
It's a little softer.
Way softer. Yeah.
yeah.
So this one has it's got less alcohol content on
Tastes
this
like
one.
butterscotch.
Yes.
Bingo.
Does it have butterscotch in it?
No.
I feel like you're like a mole. You know
Don't tell
too
me.
much.
Do I really? Did I
Yeah.
know? Like I've won. Like I'm done. See? That's all I need to know. I can
Bourbon
pick out-
has no artificial flavoring, but it picks up those sugars in that barrel, and those are the notes that you pick up. And butterscotch is definitely high on the list in Pappy.
Yeah, that's true.
I think I'm
Butterscotch
already
maple,
a genius. I'm
vanilla.
a bourbon genius. 2 bourbons in.
Ashley, what notes did you find in this bourbon?
The turd knows. I am possibly going to shit my pants before this is all said and done. I have to be the only person in the history of ever to drink from a $1,900 bottle of bourbon and say I think it's going to make me shit my pants.
You gotta. We have to drink that whole pour. Just because.
What? There's no way.
That's $150. You gotta have it.
Switch cups with me. Guess I'll be driving Skip into work in the morning.
Somebody's gonna have to Uber us home from the podcast.
Buckle Up Betties podcast went out of control. But let's be fair. I've never really drank anything like this before. I've always been a vodka person if I drank.
Which has no flavor.
Right, like zero flavor. And so this reminds me of the time that I went and got my nails done and the girl cut my cuticle and then she put alcohol on it to make it better. And I said, ouch. And she goes, burns like fire, huh? And that's what I feel like everything that's happening to me tonight burns like fire. And possibly my butthole. Like, this is terrible.
I think Emily's starting to dig
No,
it.
this one I get it. I understand. This one's the first one I've ever thought. All right, I get it.
Bougie.
So that one, lower alcohol content, which is causing you to have less bite, and there's no rye in it. So in place of instead of it being corn, rye, and a little bit of barley, it's corn, wheat, and barley. So the wheat is much softer than the rye, and it allows the sweetness of the corn to come on out. So it's going to be a lot easier to drink.
It's not gluten free.
It is not gluten-free.
Right.
Oh, my God.
And the reason this stuff isn't gluten-free, and I just learned this a while back, so gluten doesn't carry over in the distillation process. So technically, once you distill something, no matter what you distill, it should be gluten-free, but it's not because they'll go back to the original mash often and add some back into the final product, back into the barrel to give it a stronger flavor, which is, in fact, then putting gluten back into their product.
So is whiskey the only drink like this that you could tell this much difference between? Like, you couldn't tell this much difference between 4 different vodkas that weren't flavored or whatever.
Right. So a vodka, and that gets into a little bit more about how it's made. So when bourbon's distilled, it can't be distilled at over 160 proof. And when it's distilled at 160 proof or lower, it maintains what they call organoleptic characteristics, which means you can taste it and tell what it's from. Vodka, which is distilled up to 190 proof or even higher in a laboratory setting, that's a neutral spirit, and that's what makes it neutral. You're basically drinking pure ethyl alcohol that's watered down some. So yeah, the only difference in vodka basically is how it's filtered, how many times it's distilled.
See, to me, when I drink vodka, there's not really a taste as much as the thickness. Like, to me, like Ciroc and Grey Goose are very thick. And I like a thinner, crispier vodka.
And then you
makes sense.
have those same experiences in the bourbon categories too, either a thinner or thicker mouthfeel.
If you can actually drink it and not shit your pants.
Absolutely.
I would like to go ahead and apologize to you, honey, and all of the whiskey cigs that you have told to listen to this Buckle Up Bays. They're going to be like, poor Skipper. He really did marry a basic bitch.
In all honesty, they know that your absolute favorite beverage is $12 Burnett's Lime Vodka. So we're good.
I am sort of a floozy like that. I don't care. I'll put it up, taste test against anybody. There really is a good vodka.
I don't drink liquor at all. I only drink red wine.
Y'all are so white.
But I get it. Okay, you've won me with the Pappy. I mean, I don't ever want to drink this again. But like, if I had to,
You'll take the. So if
I'd
that's
go with this
$1,900, how much is that a pour?
That one's going to run, I guess, a Buffalo Trace about $90. That would probably be about $140, I guess, in a bar or more. Once it gets to something like that, it's just whatever they want to. Like the A.H. Hirsch, we charge $250 an ounce for. There's places in New York charge $600 an ounce. I mean, it's literally just whatever you ask at that point.
It's capitalism at its best.
and people pay that.
Oh yeah, they pay it.
And so,
They don't shop at TJ Maxx. Like me.
or the shops at Coldwater. So, like tonight,
Shameless plug. .com.
at any rate, sir, and your rudeness. So we went to a liquor store tonight because there was supposed to be an allocation there.
Yeah, allocated stuff was supposed to be delivered, but it turns out it was leftovers.
But allocated means
There's a limited amount that's produced, and it's literally allocated. Like this state gets this much, this state gets that much, blah, 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 and it comes out at certain times of the year. And
so
people go and buy it up.
and this is what's creating sort of the secondary market bubble.
Yeah,
I
their
would say
demand. Yeah.
So it's a game. That's like a game you'll play.
It really is. It's like collecting all of the Garbage Pail Kids, only they're $900 a bottle.
Like Skip has made me go before and go get the limit of stuff for us to have for our private collection, just in case like the apocalypse happens one day and we have to become horse traders. I literally made him go buy a shelf the other day to get all his shit off the floor.
Because
and up.
here's the deal: just like in the old times, when there was really no currency, corn was a currency, and people would distill their corn into whiskey and use it as an exchange medium. So I'm fully convinced that if the zombie apocalypse ever happens again, that we would still be able to conduct business.
So what is moonshine? How is moonshine different from this?
Moonshine, moonshine is almost a grain-based vodka. So they're going to take,
So it's clear?
right, you're going to drink that straight off the still.
I've never had moonshine either, just to be clear.
And moonshine's surprisingly sweet.
That could be our next podcast.
It kind of tastes like buttered popcorn.
It tastes a lot like buttered popcorn.
I feel like you say these words and you don't know what these words mean.
Oh, no. No, it really does. It tastes a lot like that. Would be great. Matter of fact, I know where you could get some really
Yes.
great moonshine.
Part 2, moonshine.
And it's not a store.
Well,
It'd be fantastic.
I'm actually going back to Kentucky in a few weeks, and I will pick up a bottle of Buffalo Trace White Dog, which is essentially moonshine. And you will see it. It literally tastes like you're drinking buttery popcorn. Promise.
I mean,
Hot buttered popcorn.
I think it's the hot that's getting me because I don't normally drink things that are not sort of like cool and thin, and this is like so thick and syrupy, and then like it burns my butthole. So it's
You don't feel hot right now? Like you don't
Yes.
feel flushed?
Yes, I do.
You don't feel
And
hot like sexier? I feel sexier.
So that's what this whole bourbon thing is about. It's about feeling sexier.
Apparently.
Oh yeah, this stuff doesn't even cost anything. I paid $5 a bottle for this stuff. It's just about impressing people. I'm kidding. It didn't cost that.
But that's what this whole thing is about, is for our listeners to sort of gain some knowledge and to hear a couple of things that they can sort of regurgitate at their next gathering. Where I feel like no matter where I go right now, everyone is talking about bourbon.
Oh yeah, we've covered enough right now. If you were taking any hint of a note about any of this stuff, you would know more than probably 95% of all bourbon drinkers in the world.
See, that
I'm
was my
telling
whole
you.
point.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's almost. I mean, it's crazy how much people don't know about.
There are a lot of
Anything.
people that say, "Oh, I love bourbon," and then they don't know what bourbon is.
And there's people who collect it and don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's something else.
Wow.
Because a lot of people, it's a scene. It's a really, really cool thing. There's a aspect of, I can get something you can't get.
I can shit my pants in public and you can't.
And a lot of the fun is the chase. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, people love that. Yeah.
The hunt is very interesting, and
See, I feel like women brag about different things. Like, I feel like women are like, "Oh, I love your dress. Thanks. I got it for $10." Like, I feel like that's, like, I'm more likely to brag about something like that. Like, maybe I'm not like a foodie enough because, again, I like Kit Kats. Like, I just can't imagine being like, "Oh, well, I drink this $1,900 thing of bourbon and I."
Do you find a lot of hardcore women bourbon drinkers, or is it mostly men?
There are a few people who, much more than, I've been in bars for 20 or 21 years. And for the first 10 years, if someone ordered a whiskey drink, bourbon, any kind of whiskey, I would immediately know it's going to the man at the table and would be right every single time. And now you are seeing more and more people who come in there, the Maldens. Evie's a big whiskey drinker. And it's really, really cool to me to see women who are gaining an interest in that. And like
Well, it
I
also
say,
feels very Southern to me. There feels like
Yeah.
something Southern about whiskey and bourbon, and like it's part of our drinking heritage here or something.
Then also, females have a much more profound palate for bourbon. In many cases, they're able to pick out tons of notes that us guys can't pick out. As a matter of fact, probably the best honey hole barrel that was ever produced or picked, wouldn't you say, Brian, is Linnell's Red Hook?
yeah, it's about a $25,000 bottle of rye that was, I think, about $40 on the shelf, and she picked out 3 barrels, and all 3 of them were jackpots.
Yeah, and
She was in New York at the time. She lives in Birmingham.
Yeah,
now.
she got a store in Birmingham, and she got a liquor store on one end, boutique on the other.
Yeah. She
I'm
has a
smelling a
crazy
hybrid.
good-
We're in the wrong business, Ashley. I'm telling you.
I'm in half that business. I'm trying to get in the other half.
Yes, we are.
I feel like I don't need to know anything about bourbon to be like,
Other than people buy it and
here is
drink
a
it.
really comfy chair for you to drink this bourbon in my establishment.
My first full pour of whiskey I've ever drank, I don't even know if that was a full pour,
We'll call it a full pour.
That looked like a full pour.
was that Pappy.
That's Stitzel-Weller, Pappy Van Winkle 20 year. And
I mean,
this-
I know enough to know that the 20-year is bougie AF.
Yes.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we have
Especially the
gone,
Stitzel.
we have gone where most men wish they could have gone tonight, Emily.
Oh, yeah. I mean, most people who collect bourbon will never drink the bourbon that you're drinking right now, probably.
I mean, if you offered me to that again, I mean, at this point, I might even drink that again. The first one I would not, but that one definitely.
I'm hoping that you'll like this fourth one, but we'll do one.
Oh my gosh, we've got to do more.
There's
Two more.
I got to do a mouth swish.
So the 2 highest rated bourbons, well, there's a Distiller's Masterpiece 18 year, that's a Jim Beam product that was rated really, really high. There was a Pappy Van Winkle 20 year, the 1996, which actually is not a Stitzel-Weller or a Buffalo Trace. It was a Boone Distillery. At a time when he was trying to just source his bourbon wherever he could. He got that from Boone. That score is like 99 points, 5-star. And then the H. Hirsch, which is the 16 year, that is going to be the other one. Those are the 3 highest rated bourbons.
So I think because I'm the person that's like, don't put the pickle on my plate, not because I also don't want it to touch my food, but it also feels wasteful. You should pour mine to Skip, and I'll skip his. I'll drink his instead of doing 2 pours because I can already tell where this is going.
This Hirsch is very, very nice.
You said that about the last 2.
And I was correct.
You're making me feel like the brave one, Ashley, so thank you.
I mean, I'm brave. I tried them.
Come on.
I'm just going to drink.
Are you going to try this?
Yes, but out of his glass so I don't waste it. Because I keep giving him mine and...
Only in America can you be punished by being forced to drink whiskey.
by a $2,000 bottle.
$2,000 whiskey.
I know. See, these smell exactly the same to me.
No. I figured it out.
Are there instructions to come with
I'm
that?
going to take over Brian's gig. He's going to lose because I'm going to start doing tastings. after this.
So tell us what we're supposed to be tasting on this Hirsch and smelling.
This is sweeter.
That's sweet. I want to tell you a little bit about the history of this one, though, because it's
Tell
really
me
cool.
why I smell
so
it.
bourbon
This burns my eyeballs.
So the whole idea and everything started off in the Northeast. It wasn't until like the 1750s that bourbon and all the distillers migrated west to get away from evade taxes. So the tax excise wars of 1750, 1751, that is when they all ran away. So Michter's, there's a bourbon named after Michter's now, but Michter's Distillery produced what you were drinking right now is H. Hirsch. And they stayed and paid their taxes. So they were one of the only distilleries that did. And then years later, Adolf Hirsch, which is the reason that it says A instead of Adolf, because he didn't want to, that wasn't a very good marketing tool. He kept paying the fee on it each year to have it age a little bit more, age a little bit more, age a little more, and then ended up having Julian Van Winkle was the person who he hired to bottle it. So it has a little bit of Van Winkle overlap there. But it's I just think it's cool. And the reason they ended up, we're talking about the limestone water, they ended up in Kentucky because Kentucky sits on a huge limestone reservoir. So that is what was able to filter the water. And what you don't want in water, like tap water, whatnot, that we were talking about, iron, you can't distill anything that has iron in it. So all the water in the Kentucky creeks and whatever did not have the iron because it was being filtered out through the limestone reservoir. That's how bourbon ended up. Its home was in Kentucky. And now people can do it in the laboratory, or they go to Colorado at Breckenridge and they just use snow or whatnot. But originally, that's why your mecca of bourbon is in Kentucky.
You know what this smells like?
Shit your
smells like-
pants.
It also smells like when I was a kid and I would go to like my dance class. This smells like what it would smell like after they cleaned the floor.
I think it smells like coconut and honey and pancake syrup.
She's pretty close.
These are lies from the pits of hell. You're telling me
I think Emily has developed a palate in
Apparently
15 minutes.
I may be gifted.
this smells like industrial waste.
One of
It
you
really
has
doesn't.
a job offer at my bar.
And the other should continue to sell women's clothes.
I mean, my husband's here. I've been married a long time, and he'll tell you. Have you ever seen me drink whiskey?
No, that's
Like, I'm not lying. Like, this is legit happening for real in real time.
So a fun fact about taxes and whiskey too is every year that the bourbon is sitting in barrels aging, the distillery has to pay new taxes on it every single year. And the worst part about that is there's about 3 to 5% evaporation every year, but they're paying the full taxes just like it was 55 gallons or 53 gallons still in that barrel. So they get taxed on 53 gallons every single year that it's sitting there aging. And when it's all said and done, they might only get 21 gallons out of the barrel. So it is a highly, highly regulated, highly, highly taxed product.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're in Alabama, which I don't know. Is any whiskey distilled in Alabama? Probably not.
There's some.
There's one horrible place called Detling that tastes like acetone.
Yeah.
It could use about 6 or 8 more years in the barrel.
Okay, so then you go to Tennessee, and then you go like, what's the deal? Like, why is Tennessee, Kentucky? Why are you going up that way? What's the?
Well, now Tennessee, what's the name of the biggest whiskey in the world? Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels.
Has lobbied to make everything in Tennessee. They want to have be a Tennessee whiskey, which the main difference there is that it has to go through what's called the Lincoln County process. So they take sugar maple charcoal and they filter it through that. And it gets really weird on, the way people advertise, and now they sell the history of these bourbons that don't really have a history. Michter's is one with all the history. These dudes were not in Pennsylvania. They had nothing to do with that story. They bought the name, and when they bought the name, they bought the history of it. But you see a lot of places that it's big because I guess it has a romantic quality, but they try to make stuff up, that kind of thing. But yeah, Jack Daniels.
So it's interesting. I think that that's one of the things that we've talked about in this podcast before is that there has really never been a better time to be a storyteller because people are looking to connect with stories.
Oh yeah, totally.
And so the idea that, like, I feel like when you guys were on the bourbon trail, so much of what got you guys hyped was the story.
Oh, absolutely.
And then getting to meet the people that were either
Behind the stories.
in the lineage of the story or they were the story. And that's what sort of people are buying. It's like the story and this whole experience because it is not the taste.
Eventually, it does become the taste. But to your point, when we were in Kentucky a few months ago, we just by happenstance, the Airbnb that we stayed at had some free tickets to Peerless Distillery in downtown Louisville, and we went on a Saturday. And on Saturdays, the owner, Corky Taylor, does the first half of the tour, which we were not expecting. So we're sitting there kind of waiting on the tour to start, and this gray-haired gentleman over a couple 15, 20 feet over just motions us over and wants to have this conversation with us and begins to tell us his story and how he'd retired and got bored of being retired, and he was kind of in the insurance and financial realm, which was appealed to all the guys that were there because that's what we did. And he began to tell us his story about buying back his grandfather's Peerless Distillery number and all of that. So yeah, he bought that back, but then his story was so cool because Corky's dad was roommates with the Allman Brothers and Al Gore at college, and Corky's dad was also Patton's right-hand man, Ace, and Corky is in possession of General Patton's 1911 Colt revolver. So the stories that they tell really drive a lot of that history, even if it's current history. It's what sells the bourbon. Now, don't get me wrong, the Peerless bourbon's cool. It's good. I don't know if it's 10 times better than any others, but you go and meet these guys that are doing this and you hear their stories, and it's like you fall in love with the science and the history of it.
So what happens if I add ice or water to this? And do we have any ice or water that I could add to
Yeah,
this?
it can be good.
I mean, I know.
All I heard is that Emily needs a chaser.
No, I'm just wondering, like, now I'm more interested in, like, how does it change it?
Well, I am never one to, like I say, to knock how people drink their stuff. If I were going to drink or going to suggest somebody like a new drinker how to try a high proof bourbon, I would tell them to drink it in a glass full of ice. And that way, when you first start to drink it, it's as if you're drinking it neat. It'll chill the bourbon almost immediately and knock off a lot of that alcohol burn. And then as the ice melts, the bourbon will kind of open up. Now, you don't want to sit there and sit on a drink like that for an hour or anything. You're just kind of a watered-down mess. But if you drink it in an appropriate amount of time, that's a great way to drink it.
2 drops.
Okay, Skip, just hand
2
me
to
a
3
dropper.
drops. That
What
is
this?
Kentucky limestone water, actually given to me by Brian Lovejoy.
I'm going to go with 3 drops. Is this expensive water?
Oh, Lord, no.
No.
I just don't understand how something could simultaneously be room temperature and hot at the same time.
It's a chemical burn that you're feeling.
This is chemistry, Ashley. This is
it's
chemistry.
It really is. It's science and history.
I need somebody to check and see if I still have nose hair because it feels like it's all gone.
Another thing that makes a difference in the quality of this stuff as far as how many times it's distilled. Each time it's distilled, they cut what they call the heads and the tails. So the heads, which is going to be the first part that comes out.
Water's the way to go.
I told you to open it up.
This girl has a
Smooth.
palate.
That's made a huge difference.
There,
Yeah, get you a couple. Get a couple drops in there.
I will never do
Ashley's
this
not
again.
going to notice any difference.
I will never do this again, but I appreciate this. I get it. I get it.
this is the worst night of my life.
This has been very educational, and I now can say I get it, which is the whole point of me wanting to do
I'm not.
this.
That smells exactly the same.
No, it's different.
But now, let's be fair. I am definitely that person that, like, I'm not a cook. So when I eat food, I'm like, that's good. I'm not like, is there a whiff of parsley in here? I don't know. I just think it tastes good. And I know none of this tastes good.
Well, at least you've got an open mind.
This is
about
art.
It is art.
See,
is.
that's the problem, is I think because art is subjective, and art people always make non-art people feel like uncultured swine, and I literally feel like the piglet at the end of this table
You're
right
like,
now.
here's your hot dog water.
I know. Y'all are like, ooh, the notes of the butterscotch, and I'm like, hot diarrhea, butterscotch flavored poo-poo.
Is that what they're called? Notes?
Those are notes. Right?
Tasting
You
notes.
taste something.
Yes.
Tasting notes. Mm. And a lot of times the nose, which is what it smells like, and then the palate when it's touching your tongue, and then the finish will have different notes.
And I just want you to know, Emily's husband's sitting next to me, and he keeps texting me, like showing me these texts of, anyways.
Is he texting all his friends?
No, he keeps, when one of us will say something, he'll respond and show it to me on a text message, and we
But
should have mic'd him up.
I honestly think that Emily is developing a palate.
Oh, yeah.
Because she is down here
probably.
taking this in.
Yeah, no joke. You're
I
better
am
than
taking it in because I promise you I will never do this again.
You've
This will
said
not
that
turn me into a
several
whiskey
You
times.
drinker.
say that now.
This will not turn me into a whiskey drinker, but I do appreciate. I have a different appreciation for going forward.
Now, on this Hirsch, can you tell how much softer it is even than the Pappy?
It's just sweeter. It has a very, I don't know, tastes more desserty. if that's
That
a-
is a lie. There is not one thing we've had on here that tastes like a dessert.
Lie. What are you talking about? All this stuff is sweet.
Absolutely.
I'd drink the Pappy again if I had to
Oh my
choose.
God.
Of course, I would too.
And that's not me caring how much it costs. That's just
It's good stuff.
solely on taste.
There is not one thing we have done tonight that I would sign up for a repeat for.
That's
about
what
that?
she said.
What about that moonshine we're going to do next? Are you going to get
The
me in
hot
for
buttered
that?
popcorn. It's happening.
No.
Yeah, you'll love that. That's good.
I am a grown woman.
We can go from here to moonshine. Then we can get Brian to teach us how to mix egg whites into drinks because I think that's bizarre also.
It was bizarrely disgusting. There was no redemption to it.
Thanks for having me.
It just gives a little foam. I mean, it's
Yeah,
supposed to
creates
make it
a
look
smooth
Yeah, the
mouthfeel.
foam was fun. I think it was the artichoke liqueur. It got in my head, and
It's
I was
not
like,
flavored. it's not a flavor of artichoke. It's just fermented artichoke that's distilled. It doesn't taste like artichoke. It doesn't. Don't. It
That's
doesn't.
like saying I punched you in the face, but it wasn't that hard.
What do you prefer to mix with vodka when you drink it?
Sprite.
Well, and
And
there
Walmart cherries.
there you go.
I am by far the most basic bitch at this table.
Oh, you have the palate of.
Of a 7th grade boy.
Yeah.
Have y'all never read my bio?
Like,
That's literally what it says. With
Recite
taste
that
buds of
for
a
us.
7th
I want to
grade
hear
boy.
it again.
Do you
So-
like with the City Hardware chicken tenders because they're like Court Street Cafe chicken tenders?
No.
I have
That-
had a
that's
cough
funny.
for a week and I can feel it breaking up. I'm not even lying.
Oh yeah, it'll do that.
This is medicinal.
Yeah, it'll break
Better
up.
than elderberry syrup.
That didn't break anything up. That's just vitamin infusions. I mean, I should pay you a $35 copay.
Should probably pay him a $35
I know, I'll
copay.
pay-
That won't even cover the price of him getting this out of the box.
That won't even cover my DUI on the way home.
And
I
with
think we got that covered. If you could make it across the bridge.
We're
You get across the bridge, you're good.
that, Betties.
We got one
I
more.
drank my second pour.
Dun, dun, dun.
Like, I don't even know who I am anymore. I'm going to have to change my name.
Here's your big one.
Hang on, I got something for you.
Thank you. Granted, they're baby pours, but I'm calling it a win. I'm switching with unsweet tea. I don't know if that's supposed to happen.
I have literally downed everything I could with the Diet Dr. Pepper Chaser.
I thought you were bringing snacks. I don't see any snacks.
Well, they're in the back.
Look, I want you to
can't-
smell this.
We can't really chomp and be on the podcast.
Can you-
crunch?
Can you smell that and tell that it's old? It smells like your like granddad's closet.
It smells like the other 3 things you've put in my face.
Unbelievable.
I think that's all I can smell.
What
Hey,
is this?
I wonder if this is like, okay, so I always wanted to be able to just like drink beer, but I can't because the hops is too strong to me.
Yeah,
so I'm
so-
wondering if there's something
No, there's no
in
hops
the bourbon that I specifically don't like, and that's why it all smells the same to
I'm
me.
starting to wonder why we invited you to your own podcast.
It's because I have the fancy equipment.
It is.
So what you?
Because like all beer smells the same to me.
how's that even possible? IPAs are horrible.
I think I'm broken. I think there's something broken.
You've honey mustard your way out of a palate.
Okay, y'all just finished the podcast without me. I'm gonna be over here drinking my Diet Dr. Pepper and Kit Kats.
All right, tell me what I'm smelling.
So this is a 1960 old granddad bottled in bond.
Like, really? Like 1960? Like, you're not just saying that? Like, that's legitimate.
Yeah, this was
That was the
distilled-
year my mother was born.
Yeah, 1960. So this is the kind of stuff that is my like that I go freak out on. Is the old.
We
old
drank it
stuff.
all. Your bottle's empty.
Right. I've got a few more, but yeah,
It really does smell like the inside of your grandmother's closet.
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
1970s.
it has a weird, for some reason, a must that's for some reason good.
It is perfumey.
So the wood this stuff is stored in, the old stuff, is going to be ultra aged timber. So these trees, this timber that was used for these barrels is going to be 200-300 years old. So there's going to be a few flavor profiles or notes that are not common in today's bourbons, and one of them is wintergreen. So there's a little slight notes of wintergreen. But this, of all these, this would be the one I'd want to drink above all others.
Really?
Yeah, I love it.
It does smell like gum now that you said that.
Gum? Like bubble gum?
Like breath gum. Like, make your breath smell better.
There's a wintergreen note.
No.
For some reason, I just smelled my microphone.
That means it's working.
I did not get a wintergreen sniff.
All right, I'm going in. Does it taste like that too? Or just smells? Do the smells and the taste have to be the same?
No, they don't.
Don't you wear a really complicated perfume?
Complicated?
I do.
Yeah.
Like, people follow me around Walmart. Mhm.
Yeah. So Emily told me one time that was around Christmas. She had this woman following her around Target, and she said, "Oh my God, you smell so divine." Charlie! starts screaming for her husband. Her husband comes over and she goes, I want you to find out what she's wearing because that's what I want for Christmas. So he walks off and Emily starts telling him what it is, and it's sort of hard to find and where he can find it. And he said, nah, it's okay. She's getting a microwave. It's already done.
I can't believe you remember that story, but yeah, that happened.
Because that was
also
fantastic.
complicated.
I just remember, like, if you have a perfume that smells that good that people follow you around because they've never smelled it before, that may be why you're a good bourbon drinker, because you wear a complicated perfume.
Probably.
What's your perfume?
Black Orchid by Tom Ford.
That sounds bougie.
White Diamond by Elizabeth Taylor.
That sounds terrible. It's a CVS special.
I wear whatever it is you make me buy.
Okay, I find this one more
Your husband
complicated.
just showed me his phone. He said, and laundry detergent.
Oh, that's
You
not-
wear the Diva? You do the Diva
Diva.
wash? Yeah, girl, me too. Poison on our clothes, but I
Smells
can't
like
help it. It smells
chocolate.
amazing. Chocolate?
smells like chocolate and coffee. Not this whiskey. That's what Diva smells like. Okay, I can't tell what this smells like. I'm going to taste it.
Quick
Smell like
side,
wintergreen?
quick side note. Don't want to bring everybody down, but I just got a text from my daughter who's at Daytona, and Ryan Newman died in a car crash going across the finish line, burned to death.
How awful.
You've got a weird way of not wanting to bring everybody down.
Yeah, first death in NASCAR since Dale Earnhardt. So let's drink more whiskey.
Jeez.
How about that for news?
Well, that was. Wow.
I do not like this whiskey. This was your favorite?
It tastes like a lot of wood. I've killed Brian. It tastes like a lot of wood.
It does. It tastes like you gnaw it on a pencil.
It tastes like a number 2 pencil when you're
does.
chewing on it. About to
And
take the
that's the
ACT.
one you wish you could drink all the time is the number 2 pencil gnawed.
I don't want to be a part of this because we did the Wawa thing. It's absolutely going to be on CNN.
No, we're CNN in like Spain, maybe.
Yeah,
We're good.
I think you are grossly overestimating.
So what's
that people would-
international whiskey
I
called?
think that you're grossly overestimating that people are still listening to this hot pile
I would have
piece of
turned it off about 35 minutes ago.
What is international whiskey called?
Well, there's Irish, there's
Scotch?
Scotch, there's Indian whiskey. India is the second largest producer and consumer of whiskey.
Is it spicier?
No, not necessarily. Japanese whiskey, like 2 or 3 of the last 5 years, has been the biggest.
It's got a lot of
biggest
curry in it.
Yeah,
I don't know why y'all's whiskey's kicking in. This is not. These questions are not even funny. It's President's Day. I had lots of presidential whiskey trivia planned.
Oh, Mount Vernon.
I can't remember any
That
of
was
it,
owned by George
but I
Washington.
had it planned.
So back to Japanese whiskey, which is
so Japanese whiskey is that's one of the most sought after types of whiskey there are. It tastes kind of like a peaty bourbon. It's almost like a bourbon mixed with a Scotch in its flavor profiles.
This one's not good, Brian.
Okay.
I didn't even try it.
and she's still having a hard time breathing. I have tried it, and there's a lot of wood in here.
It's not.
Of course,
Yeah, it's only a
course, also-
6-year-old bourbon. So it's weird.
1960, and it's been open for a while. So
This
it's
is
been
50
changing.
years old. Like it's molded.
No, it's
Well,
60
no.
years old.
60.
What year is it? 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
It is 60 years old. And it's a little.
Math is hard.
But it's still clear. It's still clear. It hasn't oxidized.
So how do you know when is it bad?
Once enough of it evaporates, that's the alcohol evaporating, that bacteria can start to grow and take hold. You'll know it'll first start to look a little bit cloudy, then real cloudy, and eventually it'll look like orange juice that you left out in the sun for a week.
gross.
You won't have to be told it's not palatable. You
Smell
don't smell, flavor. It's all way, way bad. But all of these, as long as it's clear, it's good to drink. Our last bourbon tasting that I put on, we had one that was not our last one, the one before that.
One before that.
Yeah, one before that. It was like one from 1896,
Mammoth Cave.
Mammoth Cave. And that
Tasted like nothing I'd ever had in my life.
That's crazy. That's a $1,200 pour of whiskey, and a Cannon Bar in Seattle. So yeah, that's a big time whiskey.
What did it taste like, Skip?
I don't know. It tasted like no bourbon I've had in my entire life of drinking bourbon. It was like bourbon with zero tail, zero burn, just caramel, vanilla, leather, oak. I mean, it's just super, super smooth.
Why would you want to drink something that tastes like leather?
It's delicious.
Okay, I've learned that there's a thing
like
called
beef jerky.
an infinity bottle, which I think we need to talk about because
That is
I'm
a thing.
obsessed with this idea. All right.
Is that what I designed a label for you?
It is, which I have yet to incorporate yet.
All right, so basically you mix whiskeys.
Well, a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll take the last pour or the first pour off of a new bottle, and they'll pour it in this infinity bottle, and they'll keep notes of what's in there. And every 6-8 months, they'll take a pour out of it. And it's a combination of everything they've had over the last 6 or 8 months. And I have not done it yet. I have a lovely graphic artist in the family that designed a sticker for my infinity bottle, but I have yet to print said sticker or start my infinity bottle. So I'm a bourbon procrastinator when it comes to infinity bottles.
Gotcha.
Yeah, after tonight, this sounds like the bottle of sadness.
I just think that's fascinating. Like,
Now, another thing I've
Collector's
started
edition.
kind of playing with in the bourbon realm is I ordered an aging kit. And we actually sell these at the shops at coldwater.com. It's an oak toasted stick, for lack of better terms. You drop it in a bottle, or you drop it into a decanter with some whiskey, and it supposedly accelerates the aging process. I've kind of played with it. I did some old fashions that I mixed up and aged the old fashions, and they turned out really, really good. Right now, I currently have a Weller Antique 107 in the decanter with a little stave in it, and I'm hoping it's going to come close to the Old Rip Van Winkle 10-year, which I tasted a little bit of it the other night, and the notes and smell are super, super similar. So I'm got my fingers crossed.
All right, as we wrap up, let's go around the table and everybody say something you learned tonight. Emily, we'll start with you.
I learned a lot, actually. I learned that they actually do taste differently. Some are actually better than others. The words actually make a little more sense now.
It's like you feel prepared now that
My
you
chest
can.
cough is really broken up. Like, I'm not even kidding about that. So I may be healed from that.
Skip.
Yeah.
Skip.
So I learned that as much as I like Old Granddad 114, I do not like Old Granddad from 1960 because it tastes and smells like, I don't know, my old granddad's closet. But the other 3 pours I'm a big fan of. That the Pappy 20 from Stitzel Weller is probably my favorite of the 3, followed by the Hirsch and then the George T. Stagg. What year is that Stagg?
I think it's a 16.
Okay.
I don't know. I have to Google
Gotcha.
that 120, whatever 124.9 is. I think it's a 16.
But yeah, I'm a fan of that 20-year Stitzel Weller.
Well, Brian, you were literally the educator tonight, but did you learn anything? Anything you'd like to add to the conversation before we say goodbye to our listeners?
I forgot that we had listeners.
He never wants to do this again.
Oh, thinking about that makes that erectile dysfunction kick back on.
Is that what they call whiskey D?
Oh, that can happen, but it'll get you talking like it's the opposite.
Well, Betties, what I have learned is that there is a lot to learn about whiskey and bourbon, and might be a lot to jump in a conversation, but maybe you have learned a couple of lines that you can pitch in. My takeaway tonight is that I have the best and the worst of friends. All right. Peace out,
Cheers.
Betties.